thousands of career changers switching to climate jobs. And what I've experienced working with those fellows from all over the world, from over 80 different countries, including many in Europe, there are some lessons that we've learned from these things. And these are fairly common lessons that I will share with you today. And I'm going to give a little presentation, and then when we're done, I'll be happy to take questions. I probably won't do a lot of questions while I'm going through the presentation, just because it'll be a little bit hard for me to track that and I'll get lost a bit. So again, welcome to this session on how to get a climate job. And here we go. I do want to start with something. First, an apology on my part. I'm a little bit discombobulated today because the election in the United States has kind of rocked our worlds. And I found it a little bit hard to focus for the last couple of days, and I'm not quite as practiced for this presentation, and I would have liked to have been. And this here is this was a poll in the EU about how people felt about this upcoming election and who they would support. And the orange are Harris supporters and the blue are Trump supporters. And you can see that most of at least Western Europe was very much in favor of Harris and are probably a little surprised and overwhelmed seeing what has happened in the United States. As someone in the US, I just want to call out that, yeah, we are too. And it's a pretty shocking result. And I really just wanted to, this is kind of the elephant in the room this week of what is happening, because this will have impacts globally. This will have impacts on climate, democracy, and a number of other things. And we just have more work to do is basically the biggest thing. One important part, there was an analysis done by Carbon Brief on what a Trump presidency would mean for climate change. And part of their analysis said that a Trump election win could add 4 billion tons, 4 gigatons of emissions, US emissions by 2030. And for a little bit of context, 4 gigatons of CO2 equivalent is the equivalent of the combined annual emissions of the EU and Japan. Or another way to put it is the combined annual emissions of the world's 140 lowest emitting countries. This is a big deal. Our work is going to be bigger. Another way to put this too, from this article, is that 4 gigatons of additional emissions is more than twice all of the emission savings from deploying wind, solar, and other clean technologies all around the world over the past 5 years. So this is a big deal. What it means, though, is it's even more important than ever that we work on climate. So I wanted to start with this, and I'm sorry to have such horrible news to share, but this is where we are today. But let's get back to why we're here. How to get a climate job, right? You're here probably because you want to align your values with your work, and that's really important to you. And I'll just start out with there are many different ways in this world to make money. We can make money in extractive industries and things that are damaging our future possibilities. And as a writer, Annie Dillard, once said, how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. And I think that's really true. And it's especially true when you look at the data that says we're going to spend about 1/3 of our lives working. 60 to 90,000 hours. 90,000 would be more in the US, 60,000 closer to what people do in Europe, in a much healthier work-life balance than I think we have here. But either way, we spend a lot of our time working. And so the real question is, how do you want to spend your life? What do you want your life to be about? And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I would rather spend my life creating a positive future with clean energy, where nature and humans can coexist. I want to spend my life protecting nature, keeping the planet vibrant. These are really important to me, and I assume they are to you as well. And I have kids, and I think about the future that we're leaving for my kids, your kids, everyone's kids, the future. And it's really important. When we spend 1/3 of our lives working, it would be great if that work was focused on preserving a livable planet. So that's just my framing behind what we're going to get into. Okay, so as we talk about this, you want to work on climate. I'm going to start with what is a climate job? And I think we'd all agree that working as a climate scientist, pulling up ice core samples and looking at CO2 from the past is a climate job. We'd probably also agree that an engineer working on clean energy installations is a climate job. How about an accountant? Is that a climate job? Or how about a project manager, AKA a cat herder? Is that a climate job? And of course, the answer is, of course, those can be climate jobs because a climate job is any job that directly or indirectly supports mitigation, cutting carbon emissions, contributes to adaptation and protection of nature, or that actively removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So directly means you're actually doing that work. You are designing the battery systems, or you're installing these things, or you're creating the software. But indirectly could mean all the other jobs. That's the accountant, the project manager, all these others that are working on all these different roles. It could be human relations, it could be marketing, administration, all the different jobs and functions that are necessary to allow companies, organizations, and governments to enable them to work on climate and adaptation and carbon dioxide removal. So you don't need to be a climate scientist to work on climate. And I'll add, you don't need to be an engineer to work on climate. In fact, every role and every skill imaginable is needed to help us tackle this problem. So this is a moonshot here. Going to the moon was an incredibly difficult thing. Uh, it was difficult, but it was a well-defined problem, and the solution was based on established science. And there were no real opposing forces other than a few laws of nature. Climate is a little bit different. Climate is what's known as a wicked problem or a super wicked problem. It's extremely complex. It's a societal problem. There's no silver bullet answer or solution to climate change. There are a lot of different stakeholders. It's interconnected. Everything's interconnected. Um, and the wickedness is further compounded by the effects, which are often nonlinear and uncertain. It's really hard to do things. And those of us who are alive today are making all these decisions, and we're inclined to focus on what helps us live better. And it's easier to discount the future. It makes this a really difficult problem. The cool thing about that, though, if you want to work on climate change, is sorry, this doesn't go quite with the slide, but the cool thing is there are lots and lots of different solutions to working on climate change. And there is a role for every single one of us, no matter what our skills, our interests, our backgrounds, our education. We can all make a difference. There's no silver bullet solution, but there's a lot of what we call silver buckshot, smaller pieces that working all together get us where we want to go. And it's really important to realize that not all climate jobs are the same. There are a lot of jobs out there or a lot of companies out there who are taking the simple solution, which isn't the best solution. And I just want to urge you to really pay attention and focus on really making a difference on climate change. This is a really, really big deal. So not all the solutions and not all the jobs are there. And we're going to come back to talking about how you can help determine or what you can do to determine which of these jobs really make a difference for yourself. So next question. So we defined a little bit of what is a climate job, but do you need a new job to work on climate? And the answer is almost certainly no, but often it's a good thing to do, and a lot of us will want to do that. And I just put, this kind of goes with the previous question, what is a climate job? Well, what about jobs that support democracy or that work towards justice? Are those climate jobs? My definition might not be the official definition. I don't know if there is one, but I would say they are because democracy is important to work towards sustainability and clean energy and taking care of the climate. And justice is at the core of climate. We have to address, my view on this is I'm not just trying to address climate change, I'm actually trying to help create a better world, a better future. And that involves justice and fairness and including that, making sure that more people are benefiting from the way we live on this planet. So you might already have a job that isn't a climate job today, but maybe it could be. And I would go so far as to say it should be a climate job. So what does that mean? So here's a picture of a bus. Let's say you work in transportation. Maybe you're in public transportation. It can be a climate job if we're finding ways to increase public transportation, to cut down on the number of individual vehicles out on the road, and if we're switching to electric buses and electric transportation buses, et cetera. Let's say you're working on housing issues. You could focus on one way to make housing more affordable is to put clean energy solar panels on the roofs of those houses and cut the energy costs. And also, frankly, to have more public transportation. So you don't need an individual vehicle to drive to work as a way to address some of those issues. So there are some things that we can think of no matter what role you currently have. Could you multi-solve? Could you work on solving the housing shortage problem by making homes more affordable by putting those solar panels on the roofs? Could you deal with crowded roads and pollution from vehicles by going to electric and public transportation? And I want to urge you, as you think about going forward into climate work, to think of multi-solving, solving more than one problem at the same time. We can do that. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can solve multiple things. And that's often one of the best ways that we can find to work on it. We can do what we currently do and do it in a climate-oriented fashion. We can think of the co-benefits. We need to think of systems, not just individual problems. Dwight Eisenhower, former president of the US, used to say when he focused on a problem, it often felt too overwhelming. But when he made it bigger, he looked at how it connects to other things. He often found solutions to those problems. And that's where systems thinking comes in, to think beyond that. We need to protect nature. We need to restore habitats. And of course, we need to preserve democracy. So whatever your current role is, you might be able to add some of these to it. We had a keynote speaker recently at the program I run, the Climate Change Learning for Action. We had writer Mary Anise Hegler, and she's often asked, what can I do about climate change? And one of her answers was, let go of the idea that it needs to be one thing. It can be multiple things. And I would say that it needs to be multiple things. We can change our personal lifestyles. We can change our consumer habits. We can change our diets. We can also shift our job to be more climate focused. And really, to solve this problem is going to take us doing all of those things. So you can make a difference without getting a new climate job. There are many ways that you could make your current role more climate focused. I just talked about some of those. And there are also other things that you can do in your life. For some people, their transition is quite hard. And I throw this in not to talk you out of trying to transition to climate work, but to say that if it's a difficult transition or too overwhelming, you can make a difference on climate without transitioning to a new job. There's so many things that you can do. That picture is a climate fresk. You could become a climate fresk leader and teach people, get people learning about climate impacts and solutions and the interconnectedness of everything. You could volunteer with a climate organization, which I've done quite a bit. I'm on the boards of multiple climate organizations as a volunteer. And then, frankly, having conversations. Climate scientist Katharine Hayhoe says the most important thing we can all do about climate change is talk about it. Not enough people talk about it. And we haven't normalized thinking of climate in everything that we do. So some things that you can do in your current job that people have done, they want to work on climate, but they like where they are, or a transition seems too hard. A couple of things you could do. You could form or join an employee resource group, and you could create something such as a green team. And then one of the easiest and first things to look at if your organization offers retirement plans or investment opportunities, where we put our money makes a big deal, a big difference, and we could push to get our companies to change where our money is going. Some other things that you can do within your organization, if you are in a position where you can push or lead on climate action, you can focus on emissions reductions. That's one of the very biggest things that we need to focus on. But you can see a list of things here: climate disclosures, disclosing risk and supporting disclosure standards, building climate literacy amongst employees and board members and others. A really big deal is a lot of companies, this is in the US and I don't know so much in the EU, but a lot of companies have strong climate goals. And these are international companies often, and yet they're donating to candidates who work against climate action, or they're supporting policies that actually work against climate action. We need to push our organizations to be more aligned on these sorts of issues. We need to think about our supply chains and our partnerships and support companies working towards climate action. And we need to do that. We need to align our business models with scaling climate solutions. Again, investments and financing, where we put our money makes a really, really big deal. And then this final one's a big deal. We often think too short term. And when we think short term, we're thinking about next quarter's profits. And often we need to be thinking longer term towards more livable goals and other things. Okay. But you're all here to talk because you probably still want to work on climate and you want to get a climate job. So I'm going to give you a little bit on that. At Terra.2, our theory is that 99% of the people who will be working in climate in 2030 are not working in climate today. What does that mean? There's a huge shift coming, and it's already coming. It's happening now. And you who are here right now thinking about this are ahead of most people in going here, right? So I want to give you that positivity. You're ahead of where most people are, and this is a great time to consider transitioning to climate. I stole this slide from my colleague Cynthia, who gave a talk the other day. And this is from a LinkedIn Global Green Skills Report. The demand for green jobs and skills is accelerating, and it really is. There's more and more out there. And that climate jobs are the future. Half of the world's GDP is being completely disrupted or transformed by climate. And it's going to take millions, hundreds of millions of people working on these things. And a lot of those people are not doing that today. But the reality is, and this is from working with thousands of people working to transition to climate work, is that there are a lot of applicants out there who want to transition, and they're often finding that there are more applicants than positions. This one says, this was a job I just found randomly on LinkedIn. It was posted a week ago, and it already had over 100 applicants. LinkedIn used to show actual numbers. And I remember seeing one job, it said over 1,500 people had applied to this one job just through LinkedIn, right? That is tough. How are you going to get a job when 1,500 people are applying? Don't worry, we're going to talk about that. So I don't want to be depressing when I bring this up. And another thing, this is just from another random job on LinkedIn. The job descriptions that are out there today are overwhelming. 5+ years of experience. A lot of times I see 10+ years of experience. I just want to name that there are very few people who have 10+ years of experience working on climate, working in ESG, working in any of those things. So I want to call out that these are wish lists for these companies. And when you see things like this and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have any of that stuff. How am I going to compare? Or I have some of that, but not all of it. It's a wish list. And they're probably not going to find the person who has all of these things. And so what do we do about that? Well, it's really important that you figure out how you can stand out. And so I'm going to talk now about what it takes to get a climate job. And again, this is based on working with these thousands of people at Terra.do who are transitioning to climate work. One of the first things that you need is climate literacy. You need to understand the problem, and you need that to help you understand the solutions. And I'm going to come back to this in greater detail in just a little bit. You also are going to need a climate community or a network that you can tap into or join. And I'll talk more about this as well. But when you've got 1,500 people applying to one job, how in the world are you going to stand out in that job? The best way is if someone you know works there and can put you in front of the decision makers. Otherwise, your CV is going to be buried in a pile, scanned by a computer, and may or may not stand out. I'll come back to this one again too. And then finally, you need to do some self-discovery. You need to look at your own skills and your own interests to help you figure out how you can fit in working on climate change. So we're going to talk about each of these a little bit more in some detail. So we're going to start with climate literacy. And the way I've put this is you need to understand the problem so that you can understand the solutions. And we'll talk about a little bit of this, but I mentioned Mary Heglar, who came and spoke with us. I thought this was a great little quote. I don't think you can solve a problem that you don't understand. And this is our theory at Terra.do, where we focus on climate education, because we think to really solve a problem, you need to understand it. You need to understand its complexity. That keeps you from wandering into false solutions or even doing things that could conceivably make the problem worse. So climate literacy, the way that I've defined it, or that we've defined it, is understanding and being able to speak in an informed way about both climate challenges and climate solutions. And doing this is crucial to you as someone who wants to work on climate. It helps you figure out what sectors you are interested in working on. There are, again, there's no silver bullet solution to climate change, but there are all these different ways to work on climate. And I'll tell you, I've talked with some career coaches, and they say that often people come to them and they say, I want to work on climate. And they're like, great, what do you want to do for climate? Like, I don't care. I want to work on climate. And they're like, you need to narrow that down a little bit because just want to work on climate is not enough. You need to figure out what you're interested in. And you do that by digging into understanding the climate problem and the climate solutions. When you do that, then it helps you to evaluate jobs. Is this a job that actually is making a difference on climate? Is this something that I want to work on? Are the solutions that they are working on and that are part of this role, is that what I want to spend the rest of my life doing? Remember, we're going to spend a third of our lives working. As we're transitioning to climate work, this is a great time to really figure out what we want to do with our lives. And it also would help you do any climate job that you currently have or will have in the future. It will help you with that. This interview effectively, I have some friends who've gone through the Terra.do program that I've kept in touch with. And this one guy was telling me he was switching from being a software engineer working on Internet of Things, home alarms systems, and he wanted to work on distributed energy resources. He wanted to work on how do you electrify the grid and do all those sorts of things. And he took our program, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to just talk you into this program. I'm talking about the value of education and literacy. And he said he went into his first interview and he was terrified. He's like, I've never worked on climate. I don't have a climate history. And he said every question and every topic that came up, because he had spent time working on his climate literacy, he could answer those questions confidently. And his confidence came through and he got that job. And he's working today on distributed clean energy. So it really does make a difference. And then this last one, make sure to avoid greenwashing and doing harm. To be able to understand enough of the problem, you can see through that. This is from Climate Frask. I've mentioned that before. It's something you may all have known. If you've seen a Frask or played in a Frask, it's a game and you lay out all these cards and you put them in order and you draw lines. And I just put this on here so that we could see the interconnectedness of everything and how everything is tied together. And this is really important to keep this in mind. And this is where literacy can help you, again, not make problems. You could pick a solution that solves one little piece of the climate problem, but it could affect all these other things that it's interconnected to. And it's important that you understand that. Okay, so we just talked about climate literacy. Now, what kind of a climate job can I get? And a lot of people will say, I'm not a climate scientist and I've never worked on climate. What can I do? And this is where I think it's very important for you to figure out yourself. And this is taken from Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. We use this in our course. I've used this with friends. I've helped talk about how to get a climate job. Again, we're going to spend a third of our lives working. What do you really want to do? What do you enjoy? If you're going to do a reset to climate work, how do you want to do that? I think one of the first things to think about is what brings you joy. And the way that I often put this is, what gets me up in the morning? What am I excited to get up and go do? What have friends told me I'm good at? What has given me good feedback? What brings you joy? Sources of satisfaction and delight. And then you want to look at, what are you good at? What have you excelled at? What skills do you have? What education do you have? What networks do you have? And then, of course, you're going to use your climate literacy skills to figure out, what does the world need? What work needs doing? And where these intersect, ideally, is your dream climate job. Now, I say ideally because we might not all end right in that perfect middle spot where all these three circles come together. And that's okay. It's still important to have identified these things, to have a better idea of what you want to work on and where you can, what you should do and how you can make a difference. This is also, we often refer to in the Western world, Ikigai. This is a Japanese concept. It has been changed quite a bit. This is not the true Japanese version of Ikigai. I just want to put that disclaimer out there. And what it really adds is that adds this fourth circle of what you can be paid for. And when you want to work on climate, that's an important part of this, because what you love and what you're good at might not be the top things that you can get paid for, but can you identify some things that you're good at and some things that you love that you could get paid for that also solve the world's problems? And so they've broken it down into passion, mission, vocation, and profession. I really think it's worth spending time on this. I really, really do. I've seen it make a difference in people in figuring out what to spend their time on. So this is a big question that we get all the time. We get people who come to us and they're like, should I switch industries, job functions, or both? And a lot of times people are like, you know what I do now, I like, I'm a software engineer working on home alarms and I want to work on climate. Okay, cool. We call that a single switcher. But some people are double switchers. I'm a software engineer working on Internet of Things and I want to be a marketer and I want to work on climate. Okay, That's possible too, but the path for each of these is different. So a single switcher is someone who wants to keep their job function and switch from whatever it is. Maybe you've been making the world a better place for dish detergent, and you want to make it a better place for renewable energy instead, where it'll make a real difference. Okay. So you're going to be a marketer. You can tap into your marketing skills, your marketing background, but you need to switch that to a new industry. To do that, again, requires climate literacy. You need to understand some basic climate literacy, what the world needs. You're also going to need some specific industry expertise. You're going to need to spend some time learning about home electrification, grids, installing solar panels, cost benefit analyses of all of those so that you can market those. But that's relatively easy to pick up. And then knowing some people working in these industries would be a big bonus. Double switchers is a little bit overwhelming for a lot of folks. And this one is, let's say you were the software engineer for home alarms. Now you want to work on marketing solar panels, right? So what does it take to do this? It can seem overwhelming because you're doing a complete shift. I have seen actually, interestingly, more older workers want to do this complete shift than even younger workers. And they said, I've spent 20 years working on this issue, and frankly, I want to do something different. I'm bored. I want to do something different. The great news is that what we found is that equal numbers of single switchers and double switchers are able to get jobs. The biggest difference is double switching is a little bit harder and it can take a little bit longer. So what does it take to do that? You're going to need your basic climate literacy, but you're going to have to look into your past. And some of those experiences and skills might not be paid work. They might be volunteer work, but you're going to want to identify those and be able to call those out when you're going to apply for jobs. You're also going to need to do some more education to learn about the new role, and as well as just learning about the new industry. And that a lot of people have found it's easiest to do this in two parts. In one way would be to start a new job function in the same industry that you're in now to learn that so you can then switch to climate, or keep your same job function but switch to a climate role and eventually make that transition. And I say that some people do it that way, and some people even will keep their current job and volunteer in an organization to pick up those other skills. And some people just go cold turkey. They just quit and they spend some time working on themselves, learning what they need to learn, making connections, and they go for it. And I've seen that work out really well. So I just wanted to call that out. It's important to know though that those two paths are separate, and this one is more challenging generally. So climate literacy can help you determine that piece of what the world needs. And when you go to look at jobs, one of the questions that I get as director at LFA is people go, hey, I applied for this job and I'm really excited, but does this job actually make a difference? And then we'll talk through, what have you learned? What do you know about climate change? Does this really make a difference? Is this solution really going to do something to help? Because if you're going to go to the trouble to switch, you might as well make sure that you're going to make a difference and what you're doing makes a difference. So some questions that you could ask: are they scaling solutions? Are they working on tough challenges? Are they protecting nature? Are they cutting their emissions? Have they made public climate commitments? Do they have a plan to meet those public commitments? What does that plan look like? A lot of organizations out there have made public commitments, but they don't actually have a plan that'll get them there. And a commitment without a plan is not worth very much, unfortunately. I mean, it's a good start, and they could join Science-Based Target Initiative or some other things to help them get some science-based targets and to really get on a plan. And then it's a great idea if you could talk to other employees at the organization to hear what they say about how it's delivering on its commitments. So it's really important that you find the climate solution that motivates you, that interests you. Focus on finding how your background, skills, and experience fit in, and then figuring out how you can get a role there. Quick story on this: I had an alum from our program who started into learning about climate. She was sure she wanted to work on clean energy. That was what she wanted to learn or to work on. But as she explored the climate landscape, she actually found she was much more interested in food and farming, which is a big piece of the climate problem as well. So I would urge you to not rush too quickly to solutions. Spend some time figuring out what is really interesting to you by looking at those, the different sectors that are out there. I've always gotten a kick out of this slide here. This guy's got these mathematical problems or solutions up on the board. And you got this formula on the left and a formula on the right, and in the middle, then a miracle happens. And I think you should be more explicit here in step two. The reason I've put this here is we hear a lot that we need to electrify everything. That's one of the climate solutions. But what's not in that statement is how do we electrify everything? And if we can spend a little bit of time learning how that happens, what that allows us to do as job switchers, it allows us to look and say, well, to electrify everything, we're going to need policy, we're going to need public education, we're going to need to train contractors, we're going to need to have financial benefits for homeowners, et cetera. You start to break down the how, suddenly you can start to see, well, they need a marketer for that, or they need a project manager for that. You can start to see the role for you to help that happen. And so this is a really big piece of this. Figure out the solution you're interested in. Look at what does it take for that to actually succeed and start to see the role that you can do. Just to go along with this, I went through Project Drawdown's website, and I'm just going to run through. These are their top 97 solutions to working on climate change. And I put this here just because there are all sorts of things that we could all work on, and there are more than these out there. And it's finding which of these is exciting to you. And then it doesn't have to be in this way. It could be in electricity or energy. You don't have to break it down this way. But this is one way they broke it down. What of these is exciting? What does it take for each of these solutions to be adopted? And what roles are there? What skills are needed? Because I guarantee your skills are needed in one or many of these. And there are roles for you in this. So this is 97 different solutions that are out there in the world. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the importance of climate literacy. We talked about some pathfinding, exploring your own interests, skills, background to figure out where you fit in. I want to talk about the importance of climate community and network. I showed you that LinkedIn post that had well over 100 people who had applied. How do you get a job there? You need a climate community. And a couple of things on that. So I'll start with Marianne Hegler again, a keynote speaker recently. I loved her talk, so I use her quotes everywhere I go. I don't think that broken people fix things. I think that it's important to heal yourself before you go about healing the world. This one's important for me to hear about because I often put the weight of the world on my shoulders. I have to do everything to solve this problem. And of course I don't. And I can't do that if I'm stressed out and overwhelmed. So one of the things we mentioned is that there is no silver bullet solution. There are all these different solutions. We all have to be confident in the fact that all we need to do is our part. We need to heal the part of the world around us and trust that millions and billions of other people around the world are taking on those other parts. And that is how we get where we need to go in addressing climate change. A supportive community is incredibly important. A lot of people are feeling existential dread about climate change, and then leaving a job or trying to find a new job is pretty overwhelming. And those two together can really get to you. They can really affect your psyche and how you feel about the world. So I really want to encourage you to either join or tap into your climate community. I live in a rural place in central Wyoming, an incredibly conservative state where climate change is not talked about. I find my community online and through volunteering with people around the world. And without that community, I would be depressed and curled up in the fetal position today. But instead, I'm sitting here talking to you because I've got people all over the world who want to talk about climate change. It really is important. So it's difficult to change jobs. It's difficult to work on climate. Having support is incredibly, incredibly important. And I found that connection with others who care and maybe going through the same struggles that I'm going through really can help me go forward. Other things, though, you can get informational interviews. You want to work in clean energy, you can find people who work in clean energy. Talk to them about their industry, talk to them about their company, learn what it's like to work there. Really definitely makes a difference. And then recommendations. If 1,500 people are applying for the same job, you won't be noticed if you cannot either completely match everything they want in the job description or have someone who will put your name forward with that company. So personal recommendations can make such a big difference. And then I've even heard of many times where people were talking to others in their network and said, hey, I'm looking for a job in this. And someone will say, hey, I know of an open position in my company. Can I put your name forward for that? And that has worked out. Really crucial to have a climate community. Again, there are more candidates than jobs. You need that community to help you get through there. And I've talked about a number of these things, but ways that you can get a community if you don't have one. First of all, you can search around LinkedIn. You can join communities. There are a number of online communities. Terra.do is one. Work on Climate is one. MCJ. There are a number of online climate communities that you can join, and they really can make a difference. And you can actually make some real connections online. You connect with other people in your same position, and you can meet people who could help you move forward in getting a job. Let all of your friends know that you want to switch to climate. The number of people that you may not know people at climate companies. It's kind of overwhelming when I've mentioned in the past that I want to work on climate. People are like, oh, I have a friend who does this, or it's pretty cool. Let people know. Don't hide. Share it. Let everyone know. Let people know on LinkedIn. Spread the word and connect with as many people as you can. Okay, a few more things I just want to get through, and then I'll open up if anyone has any questions. Some tips and tricks. I've talked about Terra.do's Climate Change Learning for Action program. I think a course, and it doesn't have to be this one, if you're new to climate in particular, a course can really speed up your transition to a climate job. So what can it do for you? It can help you with climate literacy. It can help you join a climate community. It can even, some courses will even help you identify your passions and your skills and figure out your climate Venn, what you should work on and what you might want to do. And then sometimes you'll find that you know what you want to work on and you're pretty clear, but say you want to work on ESG or you want to work on greenhouse gas accounting, you might want to take a specific course in one of those topics because that might be the piece that puts you over the edge to getting that job. And so I would urge you to consider a course. There are many, many ways to make this transition, but a course can really help. And this is from, again, I run this program, so I had to put my own program up here. In 12 weeks, people can come together when you're dealing with a common problem and common issues, and people can bond and come together. This is the particular course that I'm involved in. Again, there are many, many ways to do this or many different things that you can do. But I'm going to tell you about LFA. So if you are looking for a course, you can determine LFA is Learning for Action, the name of the course. If you do want to take a course, you can identify what parts matter to you. So we spend time in this program working on the climate literacy. That might be all that you need. You could find a course that's just on climate change or climate solutions. If that's what you need, do that. You might not need that. You can do that on your own. You can read on your own. Again, a course can help you speed up the process because it's collated material, it's recommended material. We also spend time building community and working to work on emotional resilience. You can find programs that do this alone. You can join a program that does that. These are all important things that we have found make a real difference. And then we spend time on personal pathfinding. You might want to do that through a course. You might want to hire a career coach to help you with some of these things, to help you figure out your passions and your skills. You don't need to take a course. You don't need to hire outside resources, but many, many people have found they can speed up the transition and speed up the journey. Again, this is our Climate Change Learning for Action. This is what we do in the 12 weeks of the program. These circles are all based on labs. And I'm just putting this in here to help you understand how a course could help you. We spend time looking at the natural systems. We look at the climate science. We look at carbon emissions, global and local impacts. And we look at the human systems that we are living within that have led us down this path that is not doing what it needs to on climate, and that change must take place within. And we look at how could change take place within those systems. And then we look at all of the solutions that are out there through a multi-solving lens, a systems thinking lens, and with a lens of justice. You don't need to take our course, but these are some things that you might want to think about as you transition into climate change. What do I need to know here? Can I pick? Maybe I know a ton about climate science, but I don't know a ton about climate finance and offsets, and I'm interested in that. Take some time to learn about that piece of it. You also might need to pick up some job-specific skills. I mentioned this already. If you want to get into greenhouse gas accounting or you want to work on corporate sustainability and you've never done that before, you might have great project management skills or whatever other skills are needed, but you may need some specific skills. You can either get that through a course, or you can get that through your own learning and reading, but you will want to do that to get one of those jobs. Again, competition is tough, but most people don't have everything on that job description wish list. But the more that you can demonstrate that you have cared and put forward some time and effort, it'll make a difference in your job search and your job transition. I just went through Terra.do's website. Again, you can find all sorts of courses, but I want to show you some of the variety of things that are out there. You could focus on carbon removal, software. Um, you could focus on climate-informed decision making and risk management, sustainable AI, digital product decarbonization, um, agriculture, farm school, all sorts of different things, angel investing and climate tech. There's so many different things that you could learn and focus on. These are just some of the courses that we run. We also have some for those working in their corporation, climate innovations in corporations, corporate sustainability leadership accelerator. Again, please don't feel you need to focus on a Terra.do course. These are just some of the possibilities that are out there. One that I do want to call out, however, is we have a climate career boot camp, and this is for people that want to switch to working in a climate job. And it's led by Natalie Lavery. She's the marketing lead at an organization called Climate People. And their entire company is based on helping people transition to working on climate. So we've partnered with Natalie and Climate People for this course. There's one coming up really soon. They're actually going to be two courses. They're short. They're just a couple of days each one. And it might be something that you'd want to consider doing. I put this on here. I was a fellow in the Learning for Action course. One of the benefits of taking a course is it demonstrates that you're serious about working on climate change. You can get this by getting a degree. You could take a course that gives a certificate of completion or something like that. Some companies, that makes a difference. Others, it doesn't. Some companies will know if you take a course from Oxford, everyone will have heard of it, and that could be a good thing to put on your CV. A number of people have heard of organizations like Terra.do or Climate Base or some of the other companies that are running some of these boot camps. So getting a certificate can help. Many people have found putting it on LinkedIn, putting it on their CV really does make a difference. And then finally, I just want to leave you with just a few other things. There's so much to talk about here. I didn't talk about climate science itself. I didn't talk about the climate problem and all the different solutions. But one of the most important things, and this is from talking with career coaches, is you have to treat each job application as unique. You can't just create one cover letter, one CV, and just send them off to everybody, changing the names in those. You will not get a job that way. Your letters, your CVs are going to be scanned by computers, AI, and they're going to be looking for keywords and phrases. It's incredibly important that you tune these to each particular job. Now, this takes time. But the great thing is, while you're doing that, you're actually evaluating that job and saying, is this a job I really want? Is this worth spending a little bit of time on? And if you determine that it is worthwhile to make sure that you are focusing on keywords that they've put in there, that the job title in your summary section is the title that they are searching for. Then it's a great idea to have informational interviews. If you can find people working in that industry, working at that company, that is really helpful. I would urge you to practice interviewing. The number of people who go into a job interview and they're like, wow, I haven't interviewed in 15 years. And then you go into a job interview and you get asked questions and you're not prepared for them. You can find lists of questions all over the internet that are common and ways to answer those questions. And there are some frameworks that you can use to help you answer questions. Do it. It makes a difference. It really helps. And then LinkedIn, we all know, is such a platform that people look at. Often when you apply for a job, they're going to look at your LinkedIn profile before they even consider talking to you. Update your LinkedIn profile. Make sure you've got some relevant information on there about your skills and interests. Highlight your skills, even if you got them as a volunteer, put them on there. And then here's some resources. Of course, Terra.do, the Learning for Action, and other courses are really important. Drawdown.org is a great place to go. They're revamping all of their climate solutions on their website. Great place to learn. If you want to join a community, Terra's got a community, but work on climate. My Climate Journey Collective, climateaction.tech. Open Door Climate is a great one that I haven't called out, but Daniel Hill at Environmental Defense Fund started this. It's an initiative on the internet where people working in climate have open door, open office hours. You can reach out to them and just have chats with people. If you do that, I would recommend that you know what you want to talk about. Don't just go, hey, Dan, I want to talk about climate. And he's like, cool, what? Instead, be prepared to talk about yourself, what you're looking for, and what he could help you with. So you need to spend a little bit of time looking at who you're going to talk to. I only mentioned Dan. He's not the only person on there. Thousands of people are on there that you could reach out to. And then you'll want to spend time looking at jobs boards. Idealist.org is not on here, but that's a group that's got nonprofit jobs. You can narrow down by climate. You'll want to spend time looking at the roles that are available, even if you're just early in your job search or early in your transition. See what positions are out there. What are they looking for? What might you want to spend some time on to make sure that you are a great candidate and that you're ready to get that climate job? If you do want to do the Learning for Action, you can scan this code or this, and it'll get you a 20% off discount for our upcoming cohort of Learning for Action. I will tell you that we have a 3 weeks no money back guarantee. So if you don't like it, you can drop out. There's nothing lost except a little bit of your time. And most people don't do that. And then I just want to end. I'm going to end and go to questions. But I just found a couple of quotes the other day that really made a difference for me. And this one was, I thought, pretty important, which is remember that you cannot not change the world. Whatever you do will change the world. If you take the most default option, in this case, read, continue to work at a non-climate job or a job that may even be harming the environment. If you follow the most mainstream, down the line, just keep your head down and get on with what they're telling you to do approach, then that's the world that you're helping to create. There is no way that you cannot change the world. And I want to urge us all to think about that. We are helping to change the world today. And to go with that, Rebecca Solnit, the writer, said, really hope for her is recognizing that the future is being decided right now by what we do in the present. And just want to leave you with that. Those are my final thoughts. I will stop sharing. And if anybody has any questions, happy to answer any questions. Hopefully I got to something that was relevant to you. If there's anything you'd like to go further on, please let me know. You can use the raise hand function. You can use the chat. Oh, I see there's a lot in the chat. And I have not been trying to monitor the chat. So I'll try to glance through this now. Yeah, American expat in France feeling heartbroken. Yeah, Andy, you're looking after those kids. So I will tell you this, when I look at my kids every day in 10 years and in 20 years, no matter what future we have, I want them to look at me and think, thank you for working towards a better future. That is one of my driving forces that I think about every night and every morning. Yes, grow the community for sure. Connect with each other here. Yeah, a lot of people wanting to connect. So we got a career coach on here, Andy Nelson. Thanks, Andy. If anyone wants to reach out, please reach out. I'm kind of glancing around. Did anybody have any questions you want to call out? I'm kind of scanning through here, but if you do, please put your hand up. I'd be happy to. Yeah. Is it Matili?
Yes. I'm sorry, I may sound like a broken record if people have seen me in other webinars in the morning. But I just wanted to ask a question. Do you know if you have any resources or communities that are niche down towards maybe cultural sustainability or indigenous knowledge systems? Maybe it's too niche, but I was just wondering if it exists.
They definitely exist. I might not know the best resources for those. There are certainly groups within different cultures that are working to preserve their cultures. There are indigenous communities, and I'm drawing a blank, I apologize, but maybe someone could put in the chat. I know there are groups that are working with indigenous folks. I actually just did a course myself with Pachamama Alliance, which is working with indigenous tribes in the Amazon basin in Ecuador and trying to share indigenous knowledge and learn from indigenous views of nature and other things, which was fantastic. So that's one I would throw out there, but there are other organizations and groups. I think you'll find them. I just don't happen to have them at my fingertips. So sorry about that bad answer there.
Thank you.
Yeah, others? And some people going and getting a master's degree, I see some talk about that. That is one way to go. The good side of a master's is you can get a degree, you can get a certificate, a diploma from a recognized university. It can be the thing that helps you get the job. A number of us don't have 2 years or 1 year, 2 year, 4 years, whatever it might be, and the money to step away from work and to do that. And what we have found is a lot of people can transition even without that master's degree. Now, I don't mean to downplay a master's. It can be a fantastic thing, and it can open doors to some jobs that are just not open without having a degree, a master's or a PhD. But a lot of people have found that it's not always necessary. And yeah, I'm seeing Cambridge Sustainability Institute is good. I know Oxford is doing stuff. I know a number of schools and programs are doing things. Oh, Braiding Sweetgrass is an incredible book. Yes, highly recommend that book. And let's see, for those based in the UK, have you benefited from using LinkedIn? Anyone have any thoughts on that? Yeah, it looks like Andy may have replied. Yeah. Other questions? Anything that was unclear or that I didn't talk about that you wished I would have talked about? As I said, my presentation wasn't as focused as I would have liked when I did spend 2 days in the fetal position crying after the election, but I'm back up and talking with people like you who want to do something on this really is what helps.
I have a
Let's see,
question.
great
Um,
research. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. It's not my question. I just saw Scott asked in the chat, but he's asking about your transition from a CEO founder role to working at TerraDo, and if you could just talk about your journey transitioning.
Yeah, I don't often talk about mine because mine's an unusual journey in the sense that, well, I'll tell you anyway. So I was an international adventure travel guide working all over the world, and then I came to realize that when I initially did that, there weren't local guides in most of the places that I was working, but local guides started to spring up, and those jobs should go to local people, not to me as a visitor from outside. And I decided to transition to doing something totally different. And I went and got an MBA, and I was going to do something totally different, but somehow I couldn't get travel and international adventure out of my mind. And I created a company doing sustainable tourism, working with local guides and local companies so that the money people spend on their vacation stayed there. And in that job, though, I kept seeing climate devastation long before I expected to see it. 2004, I was in Belize doing a project with Belize National Parks, and this naturalist showed me a dead coral reef and said, "Do you know what that is?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a dead coral reef." And the naturalist said, "Do you know why?" I said, "No, I have no idea." And he said, "This is from burning fossil fuels. It's heated up the atmosphere. This water is too warm for this coral to survive." And that was the moment that I went, "Oh, climate change isn't just in the future, it's here now." And I started volunteering from that moment on. I became a volunteer. I set out to learn a lot about climate change. I joined organizations, I joined boards. And then I decided finally I wanted to transition to working on climate, that was the final piece that I needed to do. The pandemic hit right then. I was in the process of selling my business. The sale fell apart because everyone stopped traveling. And I decided I didn't care. I was going to transition to climate. And my wife talked me into taking the TerraDo course. And I was like, I know a lot about climate. I don't know if I want to do this. I still learned a great deal. And it ended up leading to me becoming an instructor there and then the director. So that's where my transition is not quite the same as others. And yet it took reaching out, making myself vulnerable to learn more, to connect with other people, and then just saying, "Wow, I like what you're doing. I'd love to work here." And that all led to a job. So that part hopefully can translate to a lot of you folks. Other question? Did that answer that enough at least? Yeah, cool. Yeah, Matili.
I have a follow-up question. Since you did run your own company, right? You were the CEO. Do you
Yes.
think that experience helped you in your climate role? Like, was entrepreneurship seen in a good light? I guess in US it is, but do you think it also helps in Europe, or does it change through countries?
So that's I'm gonna have to say I don't want to speak for Europe because I have not lived in Europe. I have lived in Africa, I've lived in Southeast Asia and other places, but I have not lived in Europe, and so I don't know. Other than I have seen fellows, students go through my program, I've counseled, and yes, entrepreneurship is great. A lot of climate organizations or climate roles require, they're underfunded, they're small. They require people to do all sorts of things. They're looking for people with initiative who are self-starters. They've got go for it attitudes. And I think that selling yourself with if that is you, people need those roles. People need someone who's like, I will be responsible and I will figure it out and I will make it happen. And I think a lot of climate roles are still at that point where, a company's wanting to start doing climate action and they don't quite know what and how. And yeah, they might want someone who's done it for 10 years, but someone who's also willing to say, I've spent my career, my life figuring those things out and finding solutions. I'll do that here. Let's do it. Let's go. I think that matters. But if you don't have that, that's also fun. I've had people tell me, I'm a generalist. I've started a bunch of companies. How am I going to do this? And that's my advice is, you have initiative. Most people don't start companies. Most people don't want to be that responsible. You do. Sell that. That's what you've got going for you. It's a strength, not something to hide from. Um, yeah, happy. Oh, somebody's doing the LFA course. Happy to connect. Please reach out, and I'd be happy to talk with anyone as well. I'm a big fan of this program because it changed my life, and so that's why I'm here. That's why I've stayed. And honestly, the education is a part of it, but for me, a community. I found a community that mattered, and I urge you all to find that community, whether it's the Terra.2 one or whatever that community is. Again, I live in rural Wyoming, where 40% of the United States coal comes from. Our economy is almost entirely tied to extractive fossil fuel industries. I don't have a lot of people to talk to. Finding an online community turned me from, I won't lie, I was kind of snarky and depressed to pretty positive and excited and ready to get up each day and go do some good work. And I encourage you to do that too.
Thank you, Greg. I
Hi,
think,
Greg. Oh, okay, go on.
no, I just want to say I'm doing the Terra.2 course right now. It's amazing. Thanks for putting it all together. We keep getting some amazing updates from you. And this session has also been amazing. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. And Liz, I think you had a question. Yeah, thanks, though. I'd
Yes,
love to
Greg,
connect
thanks
with them.
for the great presentation, and you gave a lot of very useful information. I just have a quick question. If you know some information about artistic residencies connected with scientific research or some scientific work, so because artists kind of work in different ways, maybe there is a way. I mean, there is a way for artists to have an impact on the climate change, but do you have some resources maybe?
Yeah, I don't have a number of resources, but one I do have is ClimeArts. It's a UK-based organization that is using arts to tell climate stories. And they're an incredible organization. I would look for them. I know there are museum organizations that are looking for great ways to use visual and story telling to tell climate, to move the needle on climate. I don't recall the names of organizations, but what I will tell you, we've had a lot of people who got through my program who are artists. We've had a lot of journalists. We've had a lot of writers. And those roles, a lot of times people are like, oh, I can't do anything. Absolutely, we need those. That's how we actually make change, is connecting to people's emotions through visual art, through music, through stories. And those roles are needed in every company, in every movement out there. So if I can give you enthusiasm and hope, yes, you could do it working in a visual artist kind of community, but companies need that work as well. Communities need that work. Governments need that work. There are roles there. It's really important. So sorry for not having more specifics, but ClimeArts would be one to look into and to connect with. Others. And we are at an hour, by the way. I do want to call that out. I don't want to keep people too long, but I'm happy to stick around if there are questions.
I do have a question, please. Greg.
Yes.
Hello, it's the heartbroken American expat in France. Thank you so much for everything you've shared. I have 20 years of experience as an artist and educator in earth literacy. And I'm wondering, when I build my resume, should I share every single experience and have a 3-page resume, or should I condense it and just have 1 page?
That's a great question, and kind of I'm not a resume expert, so I just want to name that, but I have worked with career coaches and gone to a number of sessions. And a lot of folks say you don't need to list everything you've ever done. You can lump things together. So if they're related or somewhat related, you could say visual something or other and list a bunch of organizations and all the time that are there. Nicole Kellner is amazing, by the way. I just saw put in there as an artist working on climate. She's doing amazing work. She's actually doing some work for us right now. I showed you a roller coaster of the Learning for Action experience. She's creating a version of that, much more artistic. But you don't need to, and I'm told to often try to keep it to 2 pages at most. That 1 page is fine if you're young and haven't done a lot, but 2 pages is fine. But you don't have to list everything that you've ever done. What you want to do, ideally, is look at a particular role, see what skills and background and experiences they're looking for, and then go highlight those. So when I've put my own resume together, I've gone and I've pulled out things from 20 years ago that I don't normally include, but they were specific to that particular role that I was looking at. And that is really, I think, the most important thing. If you can highlight that you have experience doing that, even if it was a long time ago, you have experience doing that. You've done that and you learned from that, and you can apply that to whatever role you're going towards. So does that help at all?
Yes, immensely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You folks are amazing for wanting to work on climate. I just want to say we need you. Please do. Please join communities, connect with others, create communities. I was just talking with some TerraDo instructors this morning, and everyone, they were based in the US, and they were devastated and wondering, how do we go forward? How can I lead a lab group next week, right? With how I feel. And the only answer I can give them, and I'll share it with you all, is it's coming together. We've got to work together. We've got to support each other. We've got to lead with love. There is a better future out there. It's possible. And I just heard this quote. I'm going to paraphrase it, but it was something along the lines of working towards a happier, more positive, more equal future. Just doing that work in itself is good, right? We don't even have to focus on are we going to get there or when are we going to get there. If we're building those communities, if we're building that world, that work is great. And it got me to quote a quote that I heard about that. Someone was asked, I think it was Martin Luther, but it's often attributed to others. You know, if the world were going to end tomorrow, what would you do today? And his answer was, I'd plant an apple tree, because there's joy in that. There's joy, there's community, there's love in that. And I'll just urge you to focus on that piece. So hopefully there's a little something, and I hope you're all able to keep going. And Andy, thanks for all your real advice filling in as a career coach. He can offer more specifics on the CVs and all of those than I can. I just play a career coach on the internet, but he actually is one. And others are as well. Thank you all so much, folks.
Great session. Bye.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Great to see
Thanks,
you all.
Greg.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much.